Let's switch it up. Give me one player on the team that you think is most likely to get traded. Last year, they traded Debo. They traded Jordan Mason. Not everyone's going to stick around. Sometimes the Niners deal people. I know everyone's thinking Mac Jones. I'm not so sure that he gets traded. Who do you think is the player most likely to get dealt?
I would say Ji'Ayir Brown. Ji'Ayir Brown, I mean, he's pretty much on his prove it year. This is it. He's been up and down. When he came on, we already know how he came onto the scene. Immediately thrusted into a very good defense. Notably, one of his best games of his career was at the Super Bowl. I think Ji'Ayir Brown had a phenomenal year. The last 2 years have been all over the place. I mean, there's been spurts where he's been benched, he's been sat down, and it's been like the word out on Ji'Ayir at moments has been that he's regressed. I don't think that it's a mistake that the Niners went out and invested 2 more picks at safety while he was supposed to be their de facto number 1 pick back in 2022 when we drafted Ji'Ayir Brown.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that they would try to move him and get him for parts right now, especially if they don't see a path for him. The ascension of Malik Mustafa or Marquise Siegel and potentially a free agent or a rookie that may be coming in here at safety, any ascension of those guys is just an excuse to move on from Ji'Ayir Brown. So I think Ji'Ayir Brown is a prime candidate to get moved.
I think it's a good call. I'm glad that you went to the defensive backfield because that's where I'm going to. You have a new defensive coordinator, and I always feel like the Niners DC has a big say on the construction of the defense. Like when Ji'Ayir Brown was picked, I felt like that was very much a Steve Wilks guy, and I felt like he played his best ball under Steve Wilks. Then when they drafted Bernardo Green, that was kind of Nick Sorensen's guy, and he tried him at nickel at first, and it didn't work. And I'm going to go with Bernardo Green. Because now he's on his 3rd coordinator in 3 years, and I don't know how Raheem Morris feels about him. I know how I feel about him. I feel like they brought Raheem Morris in to get big plays. Salah was good, but he didn't have sacks and interceptions. That's exactly what Raheem Morris produced last year in Atlanta, and you need playmakers, and Bernardo Green is not one. He had 1 pick at Florida State in 4 years, 5 years, and he has 1 pick in 2 years with the 49ers. No one's scared of Bernardo Green. He's not that kind of a playmaker. He'll break up some passes. He's not a bad cornerback, but he's not particularly good in run support. We saw him get into it, or we saw Kyle yell at him on the sideline and him sort of turn his back and walk away. That seems like the foreshadowing of a guy who won't be here much longer. I could see the Niners trading him, and I wouldn't be surprised if they I would be surprised if they spent on a cornerback. They're already spending on Lenore, but they could draft one in round 1 for the first time in like 25 years. That could be the Raheem Morris plan.
Yeah, I do believe that there is a section of the season where there's going to be who's in and who's out, right? They've already started talking about bringing different shades of the 34, different packages, different archetypes of players that need to be here for them to be able to pull some things off on the defensive side of the ball. And there will be some guys that kind of get left on the cutting room floor, if you will. They're not going to make production. Renardo Green, Ji'Ayir Brown are maybe candidates for those guys that just may not fit in. You may see ascension of other players that don't get as much time, like a Darrell Luter Jr. You may see him get ascended into this style of defense. So there's also that where it's all about fit as well. And if you can't fit into what you originally have been given, which is a big Renardo Green problem where he just doesn't seem to fit in the defense, then how can you transition into something else? So we'll see.
Let's go to the offense now. I think there's a couple guys that are potential trade candidates on the offense. One would be Ricky Pearsall entering year 3. Let's say they bring back Deebo Samuel, they kind of play the same position. They're both kind of Z's. Neither one you really want playing X. Would they like to trade Ricky Pearsall for another guy who could play that position? Would they want to trade him for a pick? He hasn't done enough the first 2 years to take himself out of the conversation as a potential trade guy, although trading him now would feel like selling low. So I'm not exactly sure. He's a candidate. I kind of have as of today, I feel like they'll probably hang on to him for 1 more year at least. What do you think?
Yeah, I also do believe that there's the human element as well. Ricky had a slow start. We already know what happened with Ricky starting on. One thing that I know the organization tends to do is they stick to guys who have stories that are embedded into the locker room. Ricky is, for what it's worth, the production hasn't really had a lot of development because of injuries and off the field issues, but they really like him. As far as the development in the building, I think that he is very well liked. And I've seen that it's still a meritocracy where, one guy runs everything and it's all about merit. But we have seen the Niners lean towards or kind of grade other guys on a curve that they really like, as well as Ricky Pearsall is a first round pick. Being able to move on from a first round pick, somebody's at fault for that. I just think that they're going to stick to him to the bitter end. They're going to give him every chance to fail.
The reason I'm not so sure about that, I know everyone likes Ricky Pearsall. I like Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall is a really good guy who has an incredible story.
He's very well liked.
Oh, no question. But this is a football team, and Trey Lance was well liked. What my point is, there's a particular culture on this team, and the culture is when you get hurt, you come back as fat. You set a Guinness World Record for your comeback. Fred Warner was going to come back faster than any doctor thought he could. George Kittle is insisting that he'll be back for week 1, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Ricky had a PCL injury, which is very debilitating, but it was unclear what was going on. They didn't put him on IR. He was not practicing. He was shooting jumpers in the locker room. I'm not saying he was a malingerer, but the optics were that he wasn't doing everything in his power to come back ahead of schedule. And I wonder how the locker room feels about him, considering that's sort of something that they all do. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, and you're right. At the end of the day, it is
like,
a
we
business.
love you, but are you really a football player like us?
That's true. And that's the common denominator with a lot of the guys who are well liked in the organization is that they're bought into football.
5 broken ribs and a this and a that.
They're bought in. I mean?
Yeah.
George Kittle is very well liked, but he is bought in. Christian McCaffrey, he gets every contingency given to him, but he's bought in. Same with Fred. So I get that. There is that one box that you have to check in order to get that type of love in the building.
He's
and
supposed
really
to be a starter. If he's going to sit out for another half a season, like they can't do that a third year.
But this is why we said all of this when we drafted him. Did we not?
Yep.
Did we not? He's too old for a rookie, right? Not old as a player, but he's by the time you want to do anything with him, right? What are we going to do with him on his production rate? Not necessarily an overpowering guy. Not the fastest, but he's fast enough. Runs perfect routes, but he's not really physical. You're going to have to really put a plan out for him. And now the guy can't stay healthy. I don't know, Grant. They may have to eat this one. They may have to.
Shoulder subluxation blocking in practice, and then it came out like, oh yeah, he actually had a sublux shoulder issue in college. It's like, oh, okay, well, he just might not be physical enough to play. That's my. They have to really decide, can they risk starting him again, because he kind of derailed it. If he was good, they might have beaten the Seahawks in the playoffs. I mean, they beat him when they beat the Seahawks week 1. He was one of their 5 most important players in the game.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
He was better than
JSN that week.
I just want him to find your why. I need you to find your tenacity. If you're going to be like even Kendrick Bourne, some people may say that Kendrick Bourne is annoying or distant. No. Kendrick Bourne has his intent. He knows who he is on the field. And through that, he gets the job done. All I want Ricky to do is, find your voice, find out what you do well, and be aggressive at it. That's my biggest problem with him, is that I just don't even like saying that he's not a tough player should not be a jab at you. That's the argument within of itself, right? You should be able to say that about any NFL football player, and that's just, hey, well, I got to get tougher. Ricky needs to get tougher. All right, he needs to play with more tenacity, and on top of it, you need to start playing injured. It's the truth, bro. Like, and some of these things,
then you're not really a starter.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, because the truth is that I know it sounds, so bad and like barbaric where it's like coach saying that he needs to play injured. No, everybody plays injured. They all do.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
so
sure Ricky can have a 10-year career. Dante Pettis is still in the NFL. But we're talking about whether you can be the guy who gets 100 targets and start 17 games. That's what they
yeah,
drafted you
we're
to
talking
do.
about you being the guy, not
That's why they took you
being
in
on the
round one.
team.
That's why people objected to the pick. It's like, can he really be that guy? And you
Yeah.
haven't proven it. You've had moments. You look like you could be a hell of a number 2, but they need you to be Brandon Ayuk. Can you do that?
Yeah. And these are
Yeah.
guys that we didn't even want to pay, right? Like these are guys like Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk that we still question them if they were
Yeah.
true number ones.
True.
So you're trying to fit the shoes of guys that never even met the standards that we set out for them in the first place. So you got your work cut out for you.
And then there's one more guy who some people might say is the most likely 49er to get traded this offseason, Mac Jones. Real quick, we're going to get into this a lot next, but real quick, do you think they trade Mac Jones?
No.